Nobody in NFL, when I mean nobody in NFL, wants to go against Patrick Mahomes.
I'm trying to think of the worst team in the Pac-12 to really sell my point here, but there were a lot of good teams in the Pac-12 this year. Let's go with USC. Haha, I'm making fun of the Trojans. Their defense was poor. Anyhow.
So when you really think about it, they're getting the Simone Biles treatment.
We know that Coppola and Spielberg and otherwise are there, but it's weird Scorsese doesn't have an Oscar yet. We got to give him one for this movie. It may not be his best, but at some point we better give him one. With the NFL season wrapping up, it's time for our NFL award. Shazier and I are going to make our picks later in the episode.
Hey, what award would you give me?
Less good hair than the co-host and the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Buffalo Bills this weekend.
I'll give you the runner-up for best Pittsburgher in LA.
I'll take it. I'll take whatever I can get.
From Wondery, I'm Ryan Shazier.
And I'm living in LA, Dave Damashek.
And this is Gridiron Gut Check.
Welcome to Gridiron Gut Check. Every week I'm talking ball with Steelers icon, two-time Pro Bowler Ryan Shazier. 5-0, you ready to give my takes a gut check from a player's POV?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's get it going.
Let's roll. From where I'm sitting, the Niners have the NFC pretty much locked up. Unless maybe Matthew Stafford can make some noise. But the Ravens have some teams to fear. Which of the QBs playing this weekend should scare them the most? Is it Mahomes? Is it Josh Allen? Flacco? Is it the aforementioned Mason Rudolph?
So it depends on what you mean, because if you say which quarterback, then it's obviously going to be Patrick Mahomes. But if you're talking about which teams, I think the teams that really scare the Ravens this year are the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And everybody's going to say, hey, you know your favorite, you know, you're biased to the Steelers. I'm going just off of cold hard facts. The Ravens in the last 8 games lost 7 of them to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have 4 losses this year, and 2 of them from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the other one is from the Browns. So out of their 4 losses, 3 of them are from inside of the division. Lamar, when he goes against everybody else, they don't have that experience of playing against him, while the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns do. So they already know how to slow down his attack and force the Ravens to play in a different way. But if we're talking about strictly quarterbacks, nobody in NFL, when I mean nobody in NFL, wants to go against Patrick Mahomes, because the Chiefs, when it gets going, Patrick Mahomes is 11-3 in 2 Super Bowls. And ain't nobody else in the NFL that have those stats right now. And I wouldn't want to mess with him.
It's wild how asleep it seems like the national audience is on the defending Super Bowl champions with one of the 10 best head coaches of the Super Bowl era and a guy tracking to go down as maybe the greatest player in the history of people. Instead, they're all focusing on Josh Allen, and I get it for ripping off that win streak. Any circumstance, if that happens in pro football, it's impressive. I do, though, think he is the classic, and I've been saying this for years, and Collinsworth talked about it on Sunday night, which is that he is cut from the cloth of Elway. And that's exactly right. That's what I've always said about Josh Allen, that if Ben Roethlisberger and Cam Newton had a baby, it would be number 17 for the Buffalo Bills. But that historical reference is even better with Elway. Those guys sling the ball around. They're exciting to watch, hero ball and all of that. And listen, I'm sure if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you're over the moon right now. This is very exciting stuff you're witnessing and experiencing when it seemed like your team's goose was cooked before Thanksgiving. I do, though, wonder if Josh Allen, given the style of play, he, like I say, is a gunslinger. He's not a surgeon. And I love the gunslinger. You know that I've been watching a gunslinger for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or was for 20 years, and rooting for that and enjoying it. The problem is that those guys who sling the ball around a little bit recklessly will cost their team at some point a game they shouldn't lose in the regular season, and thereby require the wild card round game. Whereas Whereas those guys who are more methodical and understand where they're going with the ball before they let it go and all that kind of stuff tend to be sitting on high with that bye, their feet up, don't have to play until the divisional round. I just am skeptical, and I'm not predicting a Steelers victory up in Buffalo. I am skeptical that if the number one rival to take out the Ravens in this AFC side of the bracket is Josh Allen, I think the Ravens are going to roll to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because Josh Allen, with the way that he plays, is very aggressive. Like you said, he's a gunslinger. And while, you know, at the beginning of this season, people wouldn't have said this about Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy is more of a surgeon, the guy that sits back there, knows where he's throwing the ball, has the Tua type of vibe to him, I'm not going to call any of these guys Tom Brady because none of them deserve it. But it's just, you know, none of them deserve it. But when it comes to just understanding where they're going with the ball, but with Josh Allen, like the Bills and Josh Allen, he had a lot of yards versus the Dolphins, but it wasn't a pretty game. It wasn't a game that you felt convincingly like this is the number 2 seed in the AFC compared to how the Ravens had beat down on the Dolphins. Obviously, that's a divisional opponent, you know, and the games are going to be a lot closer. That's why I don't think that the Bills are going to make it all the way to the AFC Championship. I think that they're going to get clipped pretty soon. I don't know if it's going to be the Steelers. I don't know if it's going to be the Chiefs. But I know if the Chiefs make it out of this next round, or the Browns make it out of this next round, or the Steelers make it out of this next round, those games will start getting scary because defenses are going to start to step up, and then now you're going to start to have divisional foes playing against each other, and that's when those games get really tricky.
It's always a fascinating thing. I mean, every year we are reminded of this, and in fact, the Washington Huskies were reminded of it against Michigan. What works in the middle of the season against mediocre to poor foes doesn't work against high-end competition. Those windows for Michael Penix were a lot tighter on Monday night than they were in October against, I'm trying to think of the worst team in the Pac-12 to really sell my point here, but there were a lot of good teams in the Pac-12 this year. Let's go with USC. I'm making fun of the Trojans. Their defense was poor. Anyhow, I do have to ask this because we're talking quarterbacks and I guess divisional round and all that. I understand that the focal point of the Steelers and Bills game is whether or not the Steelers run game can get going against the Bills and Josh Allen against Mike Tomlin's defense and all of that. But this being the 21st century and all, Mason Rudolph, if the Steelers were to somehow pull off the miracle and win, will be required to deliver 1 to 4 big throws over the course of the game. Is this spot too big for him? You know the guy a little bit at least. What's your vibe from him? And knowing Mike Tomlin even more, is he going to be inclined to say, don't hurt us, Mason, don't turn the ball over, that's number one? Or is he going to say, we need you to take a couple shots here, devil may care?
I think that when Mason went into the game, the first game Mason came out, after those 3 straight losses, when Mason came into the game, it was go to the playoffs or not. Everybody knew it was basically from that moment, it was basically win out. If you want, we were already in the playoffs. So Mason already has been making those throws because he already understood if we lose any games, if I turn this ball over, we're not making it to the playoffs. So Mason already has been playing that type of football. Now he's going against the Buffalo Bills, which is going to be a tough task because Buffalo is one of the better defensive teams in the NFL. But the thing is, I think that Coach Tomlin is just going to allow him to go out there and play because a lot of people never thought that they was going to be here in the first place. So, and Mason has been showing more poise in the pocket than Kenny and Mitch combined, and he's been able to get the ball to our guys. The last 2 times we had 30 points, the last 3 times we had 30 points. You want to know what the common denominator to us having 30 points?
Everybody had pants on?
George Pickens getting the ball and having over 100 yards receiving. So, and I'm not saying that is the end all be all for us winning the game, but Mason Rudolph does a really good job of getting George Pickens the ball and understand how to win with George Pickens. The biggest problem that the Steelers don't have to worry about, if the weather was anything like it was versus the Ravens on the last game of the season, that's when it'll be like, oh man, we got to depend on him throwing the ball in this bad weather. But if the weather is just cold and not raining and sleeting and all, I think that Coach Tomlin is going to say, hey, Mason, go out there, just don't turn the ball over too much. Like just go out there and be yourself. And then if he turns it over 2 times, then we're going to throw Kenny in or something like that. I just think that's how it's going to happen. But if Mason goes out there and throw for 300 yards, man, it's going to be a hard decision for the Steelers to make.
Next subject then, but related. We're talking NFL playoffs, so I guess it's all related. But you mentioned Tua and all of that, and I think the thing with the Chiefs right now, so they get that home game, and there is the plague of the expectations that they've created for themselves league-wide, and so people are kind of looking at them with a crooked eye. But here comes Tua, and here come the Dolphins. How scared should the Chiefs be? You know, much like the Bills to a more extreme degree. The idea of a team, you know, the Dolphins a month ago were looking at a number 1 seed possibly and how deep they could go. I was making a lot of that noise too. Now with all the injuries, and it does feel like defensive coordinators have some bead on what Mike McDaniel and company want to do right now. How sort of scary is it to be the team that's expected to win? I guess what I'm getting at is, where do you stand on these Chiefs right now, the defending champs, but in a weird spot a little bit, again, based on the perception of what they should be based on the last half decade of success?
So the Chiefs, they're known for having home field advantage. They're known for Patrick Mahomes not playing any away games in the playoffs and all that type of stuff. So the problem with the Chiefs is they have one down year. Their down year is they're the 3rd seed. They still have home field advantage. And if
win the division, right?
And they win the division.
Year.
Yeah, they're having a down year, which is crazy. And this is 6 straight years of them winning the division, or 8 straight years of them winning that division, something crazy like that. So when you really think about it, they're getting this Simone Biles treatment. It's like, hey, I might have a little down year, but I'm still technically the best. I'm still technically good enough to win a championship every single time I go out here and put my foot on the mat or put my foot on the field. And Patrick Mahomes, when it comes to him playing football in the playoffs, he's somebody that, like I said earlier today, you don't want to come across, because every single year that the Kansas City Chiefs have won a Super Bowl or been to the Super Bowl when they lost to the Bucs or lost to the Bengals in the AFC Championship, every single one of those years, the problem that they had in the beginning of the year, the problem that they had in the middle of the year, that was not a problem in the playoffs. So I understand that, receivers aren't going to just stop making mistakes, but I promise you those mistakes are going to be at a minimum compared to what they were within the season, because the Chiefs already understand what they have to do to get to a championship. They won multiple championships. And I understand Tony, he's won a championship. Travis Kelce has won multiple championships. Sky Moore has won championships. So in those championship moments, they make plays. Kadarius Toney in the Super Bowl made one of the biggest plays in the Super Bowl. But when it comes to lining up on sides during the regular season, it might not matter as much to him. So now it's playoff time. It's time to get a Super Bowl. This is a team that you really don't want to come across. And the thing that's so crazy is, with them having a 3rd seed, things can still go in their favor, and Patrick Mahomes can still play all his games at home if things just go in his favor. If the Chiefs end up, if the Bills end up losing to the Steelers, the Chiefs get the Steelers at home. And then, if the Ravens end up losing to somebody, boom, they still get a game at home.
The lower seed will go up, right? And the Ravens, to your recurring point that I absolutely agree with, is that the kryptonite of the Ravens seems to be, and has been since Lamar Jackson made the scene, is the more looks you get at him and them, the easier they are to figure out. I'm not discrediting the Monken 2023 Ravens, or maybe I am a little bit, or I'm trying to tie them in with the past looks of what the Ravens were doing on offense. And now this is their chance, Lamar's chance and everybody else there, to show that this is a different Ravens team. It is fascinating to consider the divisional round foe that the Ravens fear the most. And I'm with you. I don't think they want to see that Browns team coming to town with that defense, the weight of Flacco and all of that. But I also think they really don't want to see the Steelers, who've gotten them 7 out of the last 8. And that's an inarguable fact. I think the Chiefs are in pretty good shape given the quality of their defense and how decimated the Dolphins defense is.
They're going to beat the Dolphins. The Dolphins, the Dolphins they're not a team that can go on the road and win. They can't beat a team they'll have one win out of 5 games, I think, or 6 games this year of a team that's 500 or above. I don't trust the Dolphins in this situation. And then Tyreek Hill is going back to Kansas City. The Chiefs showed earlier this year they can slow down Tyreek Hill. Obviously, it was in Germany, but they still showed that they were able to do it. So, man, but I do think the Ravens, they don't want to play either one of the divisional foes. And because I remember what Coach Tomlin told us, he's like, hey, to win in the playoffs and to win in to get to the Super Bowl, obviously to get to the playoffs, you have to win your division. If you really think about it, this season, the Ravens did not win their division.
They were a long shot away from it. Steelers 5-1, Browns and Birdies both came in at 500, and the Bengals are off the hook because of Joe Burrow. I mean, listen, to turn it back to the Chiefs here, matching up with the Dolphins. Yeah, they have the curse of Sposta. They should beat this team now. The Tyreek Hill story is going to get the headlines this week, but watch for Jalen Waddle because that's not a small matter. It's not knocking Tua. He is the point guard in that offense. He's the distributor. Get it to the guys with the wheels and that offense. And if they get some Mostert going back there, I don't think this is a walkover game for the Chiefs, given the way they've played. But the break they catch is how destroyed that Dolphins defense is. And that's going to be the letdown. And if it hadn't been so banged up, I suspect they would have taken care of those Buffalo Bills. That's my opinion on it, Shazier. But you know what? The matchups as we move on here for the first round are set, obviously have been for a few days, and some juicy ones. Packers heading to Jerry World to take on their old coach, Mike McCarthy. You mentioned Tyreek Hill going back to Arrowhead. Stafford going back to Ford Field for the first playoff game in that stadium's history. How come nobody's talking about the fact that Jared Goff is going to be playing host to the guys who kicked them out of Los Angeles and then turned around and won a Super Bowl? Which game, though, in your book, 5-0, is the one that's going to have people talking the most? And if the Cowboys lose, is that it for Mike McCarthy?
It's so crazy because every one of these storylines have actually like some type of significance to it, which is really crazy. It's like somebody actually wrote up a script. You have 2 Oklahoma quarterbacks going against each other. Like you were saying, McCarthy with Dallas and the Packers, Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins. You think about it, obviously Deshaun Watson's not playing, but they traded all that because they thought that they was in a better position and the Texans are right there with them. It's like, man, to me, in this situation,
it sounds to me like you're going to watch, that you're interested enough that you might watch some of these games this weekend. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. If I don't watch, it's a disrespect to the game. It's a disrespect to the game. It's really hard to make sense of it because Shek, I'm gonna say it like this: if you're a fan, but you're not like the Steelers, like you're like us, right? Like we both very much know the Steelers very well. When everybody else look at this, they're going to be like, oh, it's a guarantee that the Steelers are going to lose to the Bills. Like that's the one game you could probably look at and like, oh, that's a guarantee win. But to me, I don't think so. I think that's going to be a really good game. I think that it depends on if Mason comes out and plays like the last 3 weeks. But when it comes to the Browns and the Texans, it's like, which Joe Flacco are you going to get? The Joe Flacco that throws 3 interceptions or the Joe Flacco that's led a team to a Super Bowl before? And then you're going to get CJ Stroud. So I don't know which one I want to watch. I think the best game, honestly, is going to be the Rams versus the Lions. And I think it's because of the Rams, like we said before, the ownership of the team send out letters to the fans saying, hey, we're about to go through a slump. We're going through a slump. I don't think we're going to make it. I know Matt Stafford's hurt. Coach McVay's thinking about retiring. And then Kyron Williams pops up. And then Puka Nacua pops up. Matt Stafford's slinging it. It's like, this team was not supposed to be here. Out of every team, like the Texans were not supposed to be here, and the Rams were not supposed to be here. At the beginning of the season, people said that the Steelers can win between 9 to 12 games. Nobody said that about about the Texans. Nobody said that about Green Bay, and nobody said that about the Rams.
People liked us. There were some quarters that liked the Packers, but you're absolutely right. I think the Sean McVay thing, again, another victim of his own past success. No one is talking about that. And to your point, yes, the franchise thought this was going to be a down year because, as you say, they said, please don't bail on us, season ticket holders. Please still come to the games. We got you that Super Bowl and all. I don't think they didn't see this one coming. I'm kind of with you to this extent with the Lions and the Rams and where they come down. I think it's a relative hot take. I think either one of those teams has a better chance of knocking off the Niners than the Eagles or Cowboys. If Dallas or Philly, I know everybody's declared Philly dead, but I mean, we've already seen these teams matched up and the results were decisive in favor of the Niners. Nothing is going to change that much in 6 weeks that all of a sudden the Cowboys are going to get the Niners after getting whipped to the degree they did. And that goes double for Philly the way they're playing now. I think the other intriguing thing about these matchups is, and I said it earlier, is yeah, Stafford v. Goff is getting some heat, but everybody's talking about CJ Stroud against the Browns defense and Josh Allen against the Steelers defense. People are not doing the reverse enough in my book because, as you say, what's Joe Flacco, 39-year-old Joe Flacco, and it's a great story and everything else. What's he going to do against DeMeco Ryans in this big spot? So intriguing storylines up and down week one, and I'm resisting the urge to then look ahead. We already kind of did about the Ravens and what scares them most as they get the lay of the land. I'd want to focus in on this weekend. We only have so many games left. That's the way to do it. If you're within the sound of my voice, don't worry too much about what's going to be. Focus on the here and now. It's pretty juicy stuff. All right. When we get back, we're going to talk about that CFB final game. Pretty good stuff. And then we break down the nickel package. All right, Michigan is your national champion in football, I mean. Sorry, Shazier. I know that hurt your heart a little bit. And even though you called it when the playoffs started, you know, I am curious where you sit now. Is the sense of validation enough to offset seeing them celebrate on Monday night? Before you answer, the silver lining for Buckeyes fans and haters of everything Michigan is that Michigan's going to look a lot different by the next time we see them take the field in autumn of 24. Highly likely, maybe even by the time you're listening to this, Jim Harbaugh will formally announce he's moving on somewhere into pro football. And then those sanctions are looming. And I suspect that some guys will get into the portal and some of the big stars will move on to pro football. And it figures to be a big draft for those guys living up in Ann Arbor. So bottom line is, I think Michigan is on top now, but it's not going to last for very long. How say you?
Yeah, I definitely don't want them to last for very long because obviously being a Buckeye, I don't want them to last very long. But to me, I
think that will be true.
To me, I think it's a very tricky situation. Whenever you win a national championship, now you get way more eyes on you when it comes to recruiting because people think about like, man, like they just won a championship. Some people think like how I thought. It was like, I want to go somewhere else to win a championship. That's why I went to the Buckeyes instead of Alabama. But I also thought about championships because I was committed to Florida at first when they were winning championships. So the thing is some kids are going to think about like, man, they just won a championship. They have a great defense. You know, if I'm an old lineman, I want to play for Coach Moore. If I'm a quarterback, I want to play for Coach Harbaugh. When it comes to like winning wise, not when it comes to, if you want to go to the NFL, you go to, you know, Lincoln Riley or Coach Day or something like that. But if when it comes to just winning and possibly getting far, if you're a running back, you know, thinking about the team up north. But to me, I do think that they're going to get suspended some type of way. I don't know if it's going to be the university's going to get suspended or Jim Harbaugh's going to get suspended. But every situation in lesser situations, like other situations, they didn't even affect the game how this one that they claim it affected the game this year. I think they're going to have some type of sanctions. But I'm not trying to hate on their joy, because at the end of the day, they were the better team. They was the best team in college football this year. They had the best win margin by everybody. And then they went against the big dogs, Alabama. Alabama beat Georgia, and then they went against Washington, and Washington beat Texas. So, and I think they did exactly what they need to do to be able to win that championship. I just think for the years to come, they're going to have to find the right coach and the right personnel to balance it for them, because I don't think that them having without Coach Harbaugh, I think it's going to be very hard if they don't have the right coach and understanding of teaching the guys, hey, we might go through a sanction, but things are going to be all right. Like Coach Meyer made it very clear to us, we're going through the sanction, but we're going to be all right, and we're going to grow through this. You know, if Coach Harbaugh stays or the next coach stays, if he teaches them, hey, we're playing for us, and then the years to come, we're going to keep it rolling, they might can stay good, but if they don't find somebody that can lead guys in that direction, I think it's going to be a long battle uphill again.
Well, sure. It sounds like it's going to be bad. And I guess, the swooning that you heard in the final moments and then after was that Jim Harbaugh returned to Michigan football. And that's what it was all about. So as far as that goes, it would seem that instead of trying to make a splash with a big hire, they should probably stay inside, maintain the continuity of what that program's become about. I also go back and forth on this, given the day and hearing Jim Harbaugh sort of stretch for words with whatever microphone's in front of him, kind of like I'm doing right now. But I feel like there's a chance now. I know all the noise has become fully, well, obviously now he's going to the NFL. Now, all of a sudden, I feel like as much as he sung songs about the loyalty and commitment to the program that he knows they're going to get hammered, maybe something will appeal to him and say, like, I can't walk away now. This is the dream gig. I don't need the NFL for validation. This is my home. Maybe that'll be the way it goes. That'd be cool. I don't think it's going to happen, though. Of course, he's going to get paid extra millions of dollars, and that will make him like an amnesiac. Michigan who? I think that's the way it's going to go. Michigan
just offered him a lot of money. So they offer him enough money to be one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL. So the teams in the NFL, they're going to have to be offering him a crazy amount of money for him to become their coach. And for me, when you really think about it, some franchises are short-lived. Like Jim is going to do okay. Like he's like, he
would never get fired at Michigan. That's the thing. At this point now he can have that gig for the rest of his life if he wants it.
Yeah. Well, but when it comes to the NFL, think about it. Sean Payton had a rough year. People blaming Sean. Is it Sean's fault? Think about a lot of coaches. Obviously, John Gruden had a whole situation. But if you're not good after 3 or 4 years in the NFL, you're up out of there. So I think he's a great coach. He understands how to win. But to me, if it was me and it was Ohio State, it would be really hard for me to leave Ohio State because I loved like my program, but everybody's a little bit different, So if you just if they're gonna offer you 10 years, $130 million, and it was just like, hey, just stay through the whole situation. Yeah, cool, because then you'll still be able to recruit kids, and you'll still be able to keep it rolling. You just have to tell one group of kids, hey, this year is for us. Ohio State went 12-0 1 year, and then the next year they came back strong. It was in a conversation for a national championship. Let's just keep it rolling. Or he's just like, man, I'm about to go get this money. So and I want to keep coaching. I don't want to sit out a year, because sitting out a year you could be the best coach in the world, but sitting out a year takes a lot from you. To sitting out time takes a lot from you, and you might not come back the same.
I think the sell from the athletic department is some schools would have fired you, coach, given what was happening the last couple months, and would have fired you before.
Nobody would have fired him.
I guess if you're tracking towards a national title, the school's not going to get rid of you. Yeah. You're right on that one. All right, I'll back off that. All right, let's get to some quick hitters. It's time to roll out the nickel package. We've got a special edition of the Nickel Package today. The NFL regular season is all wrapped up, which means it's awards season. Shazier and I are going to talk through our picks for the major NFL awards. 5 questions, 5 quick answers, 5-0. Quick, I says. Let's do it, all right?
Yeah, I can give you the answers right now. Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson.
All right, chill out, man. Chill out. Would you please? Let's start with the MVP, though. My gut says it is going to be, the name that comes to my mind is Lamar Jackson. I think it's going to wind up on that trophy. Is there anyone out there who might end up being a challenge when we see the final results come in here? I just can't imagine it, but how say you?
So I have one thing for you, Shek. So we already know who's winning MVP. We already know. Does this make him a guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer right now?
Boy, that is a great question. And I think, people, the people who out there who like to parse words and say, I think he has to play a little bit more. Yes, if he continues this general trajectory.
Name a two-time MVP that's not in the Hall of Fame.
Is there one?
No.
There isn't one. Okay. I'm going to say yes. I mean, obviously if he retires after this season and he doesn't have a Lombardi at that point, I don't think he would get to the Hall of Fame. But I think if you give him, if we assume another, 3 to, this is year 6 for him. So I think if he gets to a decade playing somewhere close to this level of ball, the old Rod Woodson standard of, is this guy is he the number 1 or number 2 best at his position at any point in his career? I think Lamar Jackson has fit that description. And then the other description is, can you tell the story of pro football without this guy? And Lamar Jackson has sort of brought on a new inflection point in pro football and what a quarterback can be and how he can play and be successful. Sort of in a way. I think, I think that's a decent comp, but this has been a more sustained situation, and it would appear a year into this transition away from how he used to play. He's thrived now playing 2 different kinds of ball. So I think that's another strike in his favor. In years past, the offensive player. So yes, Lamar Jackson and the obvious 1A is at this point Josh Allen, although I think he's a pretty far cry from what Lamar Jackson did this year. And I hear the noise about CMC, and I think he really should be your 1A ahead of Josh Allen, but I know how this cookie's going to crumble. Now, offensive player of the year in years past has just gone to the league's best non-QB, and this year those guys in contention are the aforementioned CMC and Tyreek Hill. Shazier, who gets this award?
So who's getting the award is going to be Christian McCaffrey. And the reason I think Christian McCaffrey is going to get this award over Tyreek Hill is because Tyreek got hurt towards the end of the season and the Dolphins started to go downhill a little bit. And Christian McCaffrey, they still were rolling. Obviously, they got stomped by the Ravens. But other than that game, I think that Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers, they've been playing great ball. And then when you think about the next person, it will probably be Tyreek Hill. I would love for it to be Tyreek Hill, but he got hurt in those 2 games. And in one of the games when he was out, his running mate went for like 150. So it was like, is it the system or is it Tyreek? And obviously everybody knows it's Tyreek, but I just think that if Tyreek would have broke that record, he probably would have had this. But with him not breaking the record, that allowed Christian McCaffrey to run away with it. And their team was better.
What is it? The best ability is availability. And so it does that. So, that is fair or otherwise. That is maybe what gives it to CMC. And he was a consistent touchdown maker. This is not an assessment of value like the big award. This is pretty much a straight numbers game, it feels like to me. And you want to evaluate the context of the situation he's in, as we've talked about many times, and as Chris Long made a lot of noise about a couple of weeks about. Yeah, it's going to be CMC. Kyle Shanahan can make any running back look good, and he went out of his way to get CMC as the difference maker, and you see the results there. I hear everything you say about Tyreek Hill, but this is CMC's. Now, I mentioned that value is not a part of the assessment, or I think it's not supposed to be. So how about Defensive Player of the Year? The odds leader is Myles Garrett. I have a hunch that you may go within the AFC North, but with a different defensive player. How say you?
Like, what odds are y'all looking at? Because
the sports books.
I'm about to go to FanDuel right now. I just don't get it.
Believe me,
I'm looking
Myles
at
Garrett is the odds-on favorite.
No, I'm looking at something right now. It's called, a betting app, and it says Myles Garrett is currently the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. I just don't understand. I just don't understand this. Like, what do you have to do to be the best player of the year? Like TJ, like
TJ who?
TJ Watt deserves to be it.
Oh, right. I should have known. All right.
TJ Watt, to me, this is his third time in a row being he's first of all, this is the first time in NFL history that somebody has led the NFL in sacks three different seasons. NFL history. The NFL has been around for how many years, Shek? Over 100, right?
Well, they've only tracked sacks since 82, but okay, your point stands. That's a long stretch.
But since 82, still Lawrence Taylor was in the 80s. You had all these great rushers. Was Bruce Smith, right? Bruce Smith was in the 80s.
Reggie White, we got it.
You got his brother, JJ. You got Julius Peppers. All these guys is going in the Hall of Fame and all this stuff. Nobody's done it.
Keep in mind, LT and Reggie White and Bruce Smith all played together and are all, legendary sack masters. But I contend that at least where edge rushers are concerned, this is the golden age of them. And TJ Watt has done this alongside Nick Bosa era, Joey Bosa era, Myles Garrett era, Micah Parsons, Danielle Hunter, and so on. And he's done it 3 times. It really is a remarkable. Now, the pushback is it's not a lifetime achievement award. This is about this year, but TJ Watt had the better year.
In every aspect of the year.
Except for where the overall defense is ranked. And then you get into the murky conversation of how much credit are you going to give Myles Garrett for doing that with and they're the better team, I guess, by 1 game ultimately. So how much credit do you give the Browns defense versus the Steelers defense? And the pushback is also like, hey, Myles Garrett hasn't had many sacks in the second half of the season, but that's because he's getting double and triple teamed. And look how he's freeing up his teammates. Do you think Micah Parsons and Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa and TJ Watt ain't seeing double teams too? I mean, what are we talking about?
Every game. Like sometimes you'll watch games and it's 3 people on TJ. But the thing is, I'm going to say TJ. Obviously, I'm biased to TJ. He's a friend of mine, and I'm going off of stats and I'm going off of performances that I have watched both of their teams. Myles Garrett has a lot of pressures, but TJ has more. I think Micah Parsons has more as well. But when you really think about it, I think it was some point they were like, Myles Garrett is going to get a Defensive Player of the Year in his career. Right.
It's because he didn't have one, and so we have to give him his roses at some point, and that's why they decided to. That is how these things go.
To me, I think that it had to be because somebody can't be 6 sacks ahead of you, and they say, hey, this guy's Defensive Player of the Year. It's like, and you. When he doesn't play, they lose. Like, it's ridiculous. When TJ doesn't play, they lose. So
that's right. It's like, well, listen. We know that Scorsese, we know that Coppola and Spielberg and otherwise are there, but it's weird Scorsese doesn't have an Oscar yet. We got to give him one for this movie. It may not be his best, but at some point we better give him one. I feel like that is the momentum.
That's what happened.
Right. Behind we got to give, it would be crazy if he finished without ever winning Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe he doesn't even deserve it this time. All right. Next up is this one's actually kind of interesting. I know you're going to argue with me, and I think I probably agree with you, but you told me C.J. Stroud is the Offensive Rookie of the Year over Puka. Puka Nacua, of course, broke records, the greatest receiving year for a rookie ever. So I think you're right about that. Who should get Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Who should get Defensive Rookie of the Year? Oh, that's a good one. So I was looking at it and I was thinking about it. And when you really think about it, a lot of people are going to say, man, I think that, Jalen Carter should get it. Jalen Carter should get it. But when you really think about it, this man, Will Anderson, had a really good season and he's a leader on that team. I can say Will Anderson. I think Will Anderson had an amazing year, and in my opinion, I don't think you can go wrong with Will Anderson. I understand Jalen Carter had a phenomenal year as well, but in my honest opinion, I'll probably lean on Will Anderson.
I think that's right. And that Texans defense, D'Amico Ryans rightly got a lot of credit for, cobbling together a halfway decent unit there with some mediocre parts, no slight to any individual there. The guy who is the specimen on that defense and will emerge more over the coming years is the aforementioned Will Anderson. I think he's the difference maker there. A lot of knocks on him not being as splashy as some other guys drafted in that slot, but I think there's no Texans fan who would argue with how good and what a difference maker he's been in just his rookie season. Look out, Joe Flacco. He's coming to get you this weekend. All right, so who is your coach of the year? You got D'Amico Ryans, Shane Steichen, and, Sean McVay, I already said, victim of his own success, but really a stunning year for the Rams. And then there's Kevin Stefanski, who played, I think, about 7 different quarterbacks and ended up almost taking down the Ravens and winning the AFC North. How say you?
I'm going to have to go with, so I just hate how much I'm talking about people that are rivals to the teams that I like. So obviously the University of Michigan, the team up north, wins the national championship. We have to talk about them. The Ravens have the number 1 seed. We have to talk about them. And then now we have to talk about coach of the year. And I think it's Kevin Stefanski. Because when you really think about it, their team has the number 1 defense, which obviously that speaks for itself. You can number 1, number 2, number 3, majority of the year they have number 1 defense. Then when you think about that, they're playing with quarterbacks. Sometimes you don't even know who their quarterback is. I think 1 week they had PJ Walker. Then the other week they had, DTR.
DTR, right.
DTR. Then they get Joe Flacco off the couch, who was watching the quarterback Netflix series at the beginning of the season. And now he's over here playing quarterback in the NFL and leading his team to not the number 7 seed. They were at a lock for the number 6, the number 5 seed. Like 3 weeks before the playoffs figuring out who was in the playoffs, the Browns already had their spot locked. So to me, I think Kevin Stefanski, the way he's coaching his team, he doesn't have his starting quarterback, and now they're going against a team that's very favorable that they can still win against. Man, I think Kevin Stefanski had an amazing coaching job. I understand all these other coaches, they have new teams, they're doing a good job, but to have this level of play and you don't have your starting quarterback, everybody else is struggling without their starting quarterback, but nobody is playing as well as the Browns without their starting quarterback.
Well, I won't push back too hard on that, but I will. I mean, the Colts just about got in with Gardner Minshew playing the vast majority of the season. Imagine that. That shook my confidence.
Almost only works in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Well, I hear you. And my coach of the year is obviously Mike Vrabel for winning that game against the Jaguars in Week 18 when the Pittsburgh Steelers had to have it to get to the playoffs. But I think. To me, I think we're working too hard a little bit here. It's D'Amico Ryans has to be the answer here. And, if Minshew gets those Colts into the playoffs, then it's Steichen. I would flip my answer on that. But both of these teams were expected to do 0. Their rosters were not up to snuff by the collective wisdom. The only chance that the Jacksonville Jaguars didn't have to win the AFC South was if Mike Vrabel did something special with the Titans. He didn't, they didn't, and still the Texans got over with a rookie QB who was in the conversation for MVP 6 or 8 weeks ago. Not a ton of talent apparent. If you looked at that roster at the end of around Labor Day, you wouldn't have said this Texans team is going somewhere. Well, they're playing in the playoffs, so it's got to be D'Amico Ryans. And that's that, Shazier, except for this. I want you to enjoy these playoffs. If your team isn't in the playoffs, well, you can start looking through draft analysis and getting ready for 2024. Much will change between now and then, and that's what's great about sports and specifically pro football and the 12-month-a-year operation that it's become. You can immediately turn the page and start looking ahead to next year. And if you're in the mix, this is the good time. This is what you wait for all year. Don't worry about the cynicism about, I know we're going to lose this game and I know we're not going to win the Super Bowl. Enjoy now. Enjoy it with the people you enjoy watching the games with. If you don't enjoy this, then just turn off the TV and go watch the Golden Globes on repeat. If that's your Super Bowl, I say, good for you. if you're a football fan, congratulations. You made it to prime time. This is the big event upcoming, starting this weekend. Can't wait. Can't wait to talk to you next week, Shazier. But for now, that's it for Gridiron Gut Check.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited about this week, man, because think about how long we waited for football. And think about how short football is. And now we're at the moment where we'll figure out who's actually the best team in this season. And the one thing that's so great about football, Tom Brady and his team, they was a number 7 seed. They won the Super Bowl before. The Steelers won it as a 6 seed before. The Giants won it as a 6 seed before. So even though even though the 49ers and the Ravens look like they can win it all, hey, we just got to watch and get the popcorn ready.
You know, every year can't end with the Lombardi trophy, or else you're really going to live a sad life, no matter what team you root for, if that's the standard of success. Success for this Steelers fan and my family, the first season without my old man, the Steelers got in, honoring him, watching it, so we didn't skip a beat in Steelers Nation, at least in my family, so we appreciate that. And yeah, can't wait to watch, Shazier.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that we're winning the championship. I was just saying, like, everybody just be happy.
I hear you. That's right.
All right, cool. So make sure to follow, rate, and review the show on wherever you're listening. Check us out on YouTube on the Wondery channel, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. See you all next week.